Hello and welcome to episode 13. Unlucky for some, but not for you guys listening, of From the Be All End, the Burnley FC podcast. We're back. The football's back this weekend. We had an enforced break very early on due to Luton Town not getting their stadium ready. But we're back in action this Sunday against Aston Villa. And as ever, we've got a full squad to discuss the latest ins and outs, the Villa game, and also, it looks like it's back on, ALK wanting to buy another football club. So as ever, Simon Evans, Chris Borden, Justin Connolly and Paul Woodhouse join me for this week's episode. Let's start with some incomings. We've had two this week, two in the same day, absolutely spoiled. Hannes Delcroix, a Belgian left-back, left centre-half, coming in from Anderlecht. He's well known to Vincent Kompany. He's come in for about €1 million, I think, is the quarter deal. And then, of course, we had the long-running saga of Aaron Ramsey came to an end with a rather fetching Ken and Barbie reveal video. The young Three Lions star joining from Aston Villa, Sunday's opponents, of course, in a deal worth about 14 million quid. We think as an initial, of course, all transfer fees undisclosed, such is the way of the world. What do we think about those incomings? Justin, let's start with you. What do we think about that? So Delcroix and Ramsey bolstering our Premier League squad.
I think Ramsey's a good signing, positive player with a bit of pace, maybe it's because I've heard of him. He's like one of the few players that we've signed that I've actually seen play before we've signed him on. He did okay at Middlesbrough the second half of last season, did he? I think he scored 5 in 11, something like that. Represented England all the way up to the under 20s. So he fits that profile player that we buy and improve and then sell on it. And to me, it's quite exciting that we're signing these kind of players, these England international young players who, at this stage of the career, rather than like before they've made it or when they're knackered at the end of the career, it's nice that we're getting them, at a point where we can, make them better and take advantage of them. Delcroix, another one that's completely unknown to me. I got a bit excited when I saw him wearing the number 3 shirt. I thought he was the missing left back, but apparently I'm told he's a bit more of a centre back. And how many of those do we need? By my reckoning, we've got about 6 senior players now who can play there, but I suppose we don't know what Kompany's plans are tactically. If he's going to play that 3 at the back, then maybe we will need 6. But it'd be interesting to see how he can keep all those wingers and all those centre backs happy over the season.
Yeah, and I thought whoever had 3 minutes for the Dale Stephens summer signing transfer window was going to get lucky then when Justin was talking about signing players at the start of their career. But Woody, it does seem like we're still looking for that left back and probably a striker. But Aaron Ramsey, I like the look of him last year for Norwich in the first half, Middlesbrough in the second half. It is another kind of positive sign that this strategy that we've got seems to be working.
That's exactly right. And he seems to be, off his highlights reel and what we've seen of him, like you say, at Norwich and Middlesbrough, it looks like a ready-made Teller replacement. He's got that slight impudence. He's got a little bit more about him than just running in straight lines, etc. He has a nice little touch. He can find the ball. He can hit it with his left foot quite nicely as well, to all extents and purposes. And he also seems a very nice lad. That interview with, his initial interview, he seemed a very level-headed, decent guy who really wants to do well for Burnley. So I think that's a good start.
Yeah, Chris, just picking up on that interview, very, very enthusiastic. And, you've interviewed, I bet you don't even care to remember the amount of people you've interviewed at Burnley over the years. But that's what we want. He seems to really endear himself to Burnley fans with that interview. He's, absolutely buzzing, said he couldn't take the smile off his face. That goes a long way, doesn't it, when a young lad is coming in and I know they're making the right noises, but that's what you love to see, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. You can always tell when a player's, you don't complete the move unless you happen to go through with it, obviously. But you can always tell when a player's maybe moved against his sort of, his better intentions. Maybe he wanted, if he felt he deserved to stay put where he was and earn a chance at a bigger club, for example. But as you say, there's no sort of element of that. There's no regret. I mean, obviously there's the buyback clause that if he does well for Burnley, Villa can pick him up down the line. But that willingness to go out as well. He obviously doesn't care where in the country. Like last year, you couldn't get two more disparate. To go on loan at Norwich for the first half of the season, and then go on loan at Middlesbrough. You put it in the miles, aren't you? But I believe you're not wholly popular in Norwich, because I think he celebrated a goal for Middlesbrough against them, didn't he, later in the season, and give the fans a bit of stick. But I say he's got that sort of teller profile where he can play as like a wide forward or off the front, or probably through the middle if pushed. Yeah, he can generate a yard of space, and I say the age is just just perfect. It fits the company profile perfectly, and I think, he may well be the most exciting of the lot so far.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Simon. Chris mentioned there about him upsetting Norwich fans. I don't know if you get as annoyed at me of players not celebrating against teams they've played for. I can get it, if you're an Andy Payton, you're born in Burnley, you're a big Burnley fan. But it really winds me up when players, do the old kind of calm down, I'm not celebrating. They've spent 12 games on loan there. He seems to have that enthusiasm that Teller had. He's got the smile that Teller had. He thinks he said he's settled in. Somebody did point out to me that I think in the interview video, he did say the words, "We're all excited for Friday," which perhaps suggested that he was signed, as we expected him to be, prior to the City game. And for whatever reason, it's taken us 2 weeks to announce it. But are you enthused by that? I know earlier in the week you were perhaps scratching your head and wondering whether the window had kind of slowed down a bit, shall we say, or started to fizzle. Does that kind of lift the energy against, for this window a bit?
Yeah, it does. I agree with everything that's been said about him, and the interview was great. I mean, why they didn't edit out that bit where he said, "I'm really looking forward to Friday," I don't know. They must have thought nobody would notice, but we all did, obviously. But yeah, they've held on to that for some reason. But I think, look, it's like Christmas, isn't it, the transfer window? And we're all like kids at Christmas. And, if the stocking is pretty full at the end of the window, then we're all happy. I mean, I would say these two signings, Lacroix is definitely a sort of selection box, chocolate money sort of signing that's just going in there just to... He's really a stocking filler, isn't he? A squad filler. He's not a player who you're thinking, he's gonna come in and change our defence around. He might do, because none of us have seen him. And Ramsey, I mean, what is Ramsey? He's that sort of, he's that shiny toy that you did want, really, that you really, really wanted, and you hope it's got the batteries inside.
Oh, I love that. This Christmas analogy just went on and on and on, and we even got the batteries at the end. But
are you drunk?
I know he's come back from the cricket, and he's high as a kite on kind of similes. And
he's had too much sun.
I've just had an half-hour drive to think of my lines, haven't I? So,
That's it, you see. We'll talk about some more possible incomings in a second, but Justin, just back to you. What does these signings mean for perhaps some outgoings? I mean, there's been talk of Samuel Bastian, getting ready for a move back to Belgium. We kind of, I think, expected that. And I guess we shouldn't read too much into the City starting lineup, but there was no Charlie Taylor, no Jay Rodriguez in the matchday squad. The likes of Cork and Brownhill were both on the bench. What do we expect from an outgoing, do you think, in terms of, with a week or so left of the transfer window?
I think it's obvious, a natural process, isn't it? That when you sign in, how many is it now? Is it 12 we signed in this window?
I think
without seeing too many disappear. I think there's only a couple gone out on loan, haven't we? I don't think we've sold.
Nally out on loan and Bobby Thomas permanent. And then maybe a couple of young as well.
A couple of young players out on loan. So we don't want to end up with a bloated squad dragging on the wage bill, do we? We don't want that. So it makes sense that naturally some of those older stalwart players that we've seen are probably going to be making an exit fairly soon. I don't know whether Charlie Taylor's going to be one of them. I think he's still quite a useful player to have around, especially when he can play in a couple of positions. A lot of talk about Brownhill possibly making his way out, and like we said earlier, I think if we get a decent bid for him, I can see that one happening. Apart from that, there's a few players there. I think Jay Rodriguez signed a new contract, didn't he? Was it last season? So I can't see that happening. But I think it's only natural that these players are in stages of their career that they want to be playing games, don't they? And a lot of these players who were Dyche regulars, people like Jack Cork, as you mentioned, they're not going to be playing as much this season as they were last season. And if we it's all about getting offers in for them. It's all about getting people interested in them. And I think we'll probably see that the outgoings accelerate a little bit over the next week before the window closes.
Yeah, and do you feel that there's perhaps a danger when you have such a big high turnover, and somebody, I think it was Tony Scholes actually on Up the Clarets, basically had a list of all of the company signings, and you think about that over a 2-year period, not even a 2-year period, is it really? It's kind of 12 months, such a huge turnover of players. Do you perhaps risk then having a group of 11 individual players, and I'm not certain that's going to be the case, but do you need some of those older heads like a Cork, like a Brownhill to be the glue that, at least for the first season, or at least for the first half of the season, glues that kind of team together, do you think?
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? You've got to have something. You've got to have something that gels. It's like that old idea of having that spine, isn't it? From your goalkeeper to your centre half, your midfield to your forward. And it seems like, I'm not overly sure whether we've kind of got that same kind of glue that we had last season, like we had with Bones up front, etc. And I don't see who's replacing all these people right now. But time will tell, I think it's a lot of players to try and integrate, especially in a Premier League season. And that's the fun of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that's, we talked about the excitement of being linked with all these kind of exciting players rather than, some of the kind of old heads that we'd perhaps previously brought in. Chris, I mean, Cullen signed his new deal. I think we kind of expected that. I think, after Zaroury and Benson signed their deals, does Cullen now become that kind of elder statesman, the lieutenant almost for company in the middle? I think he had the armband, did he not, against City, perhaps, I think?
Yeah, he becomes the fulcrum of it. I mean, I wrote before he kicked a ball for Burnley, just speaking to the journalists over in Belgium, and he was the one that understood the system. He was that sort of pivotal player who, he was the one who was dropping into the back three at Anderlecht. We didn't really see that as much because it ended up inverting the fullbacks. But he understood to the nth degree the way company wanted to play, and it's just that well, he's just a metronome, isn't he? You look at him, he's obviously a fit lad, but he's not this athlete that's going to get up and down and up and down. He's just going to sit in there and just keep things ticking over. You won't notice him during a game, but every week he'll be an 8 out of 10 sort of thing. But looking at the sort of influx, I mean, it's obviously nowhere near as many as Forest brought in last year. But if you look back, that Forest team obviously were promoted via the playoffs, and didn't secure a lot of those loan players that they'd gone up with, and ended up bringing nigh on 20, 23, 24 players in. Yeah. Took a long while to adapt. And we're in that sort of situation to a lesser extent where you've got another batch of players they're going to have to. We've all said how remarkable it was that they gelled so quickly, so well last year. You're in the same boat again, almost. And Steve Cooper's a damn fine manager. I know, Vincent Kompany's a damn fine manager as well. And I say hopefully we have the same outcome, and they both, they stay in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting when you have such a high turnover. And Simon, there's been a couple more links just before we start recording on Thursday night. Sasha, friend of the podcast, had reported that Burnley had made the first move for Johan Bakayoko from PSV Eindhoven. He's another winger, Kel Surprise, but can play as a forward, got 2 assists against Rangers, I think, earlier in this week. And of course, yesterday, much to our amusement on the WhatsApp group, the Batman, Michu Batshuayi, he of the former parish of Chelsea and Crystal Palace, also linked. It's getting to silly season, isn't it, as we head to the last week of the window?
Yeah, and we do have some business that we need to conclude, really. I mean, the left back and the striker positions that we've talked about for all summer, basically. If Maatsen isn't coming, then that left back position does need sorting. If we're going to play that system this year, are we perhaps switching to a three centre backs? Signing yet another central defender suggests maybe that might be something that we do quite regularly. But yeah, the big striker, we talked about it on the last pod. Looking for somebody who can score goals. It's extremely difficult to do that. I mean, you look at a player who would have been a fantastic signing, Balogun from Arsenal, who scored all those goals in France last year. I think 20 goals in French First Division. And Arsenal, were quoted as wanting 35 million for him, which does seem to be, even our new big spending era seems to be out of our reach, that kind of striker. So you're in the position where, well, what are you going for as a striker? Are you going for someone like Bakayoko, who's not got a lot of experience, but is really highly rated and he's been chased by a number of clubs, and hope that is gonna, he's gonna live up to his potential? Or do you go the route that we've gone in the past, which is looking to the Championship for somebody who was a top scorer there? And there doesn't seem an obvious candidate for that, really. I mean, probably Nathan Teller was that player, but I think there is a problem here. Going back to what Chris was saying, I mean, I've been thinking, are we getting into Forest territory? I mean, as Chris rightly pointed out, the numbers aren't of that volume, but it's a lot to ask at the start of a season for all these players to gel together in the Premier League, playing against teams as good as the one we're playing on Sunday. It is going to be tricky to do that, and I'll be a little bit surprised if players like Brownhill in particular. I think it's one thing to talk about J-Rod and Jack Cork, who perhaps time has caught up with both of those players. But Brownhill, he was a key player last year, and I was presuming was going to be a key part of our midfield this year. I don't really understand that, unless there's a contractual issue there that we don't know about, that he's not committing to something, or that the club think they can cash in on him if an offer comes in that's above what our valuation would have been for him. But I'm a bit concerned about that midfield area if we don't have that sort of continuity in there.
Yeah, I think Wolves and West Ham both quoted as being interested in Brownhill over the last kind of 7 days or so. Justin, as Simon mentioned there, we are still a left back short and a forward short. Do we perhaps look at somebody we perhaps looked at earlier in the window to solve our striking issues? Mikatadze down at Metz, I think he started with a goal against Marseille. He feels perhaps more than Amdouni as being more of a kind of central goal-getting striker. How concerned are you at the fact that we're a week out and we've not quite got to, the end of the shopping list?
I am concerned. I'm concerned. I like everybody else has said, I look at the squad and I'm not 100% convinced that there's enough goals in the squad for us to do well this season. I don't know where they're going to come from. So I think we still do need that player. But as Simon says, everybody wants that player, don't they? Everybody wants that player who's going to get them 15 goals in the Premier League. And there aren't that many of them about, and they're very expensive. So I think the most probable outcome is that we'll probably end up using one of those 2 Premier League loans on a player of that in that position. Perhaps somebody from City, or I just think paying the kind of money that you're going to have to pay to get that player who's going to score you 15 goals in the Premier League. I don't think we've got that money, and I think unless we can secure somebody on loan who might do that for us, I think we're probably going to struggle. So maybe use one of those loans on someone like that, and then fill the left back slot. I still think we need another defensive midfielder. I'm not convinced that Sander Berge is that guy who's going to, sit in front of the back four and break things up. I do think that we need that sort of like player who's going to sit deep and break things up, that sort of shield for the back four. I don't think we've signed that player yet either. So there's three outstandings there that I think the slots that we need to fill. But I'd be very surprised if any one of them is a player that I've ever heard of, because so far this summer we haven't signed hardly anybody that I've heard of. But I'm sure that company's got a long list that he's working through, and you've got to trust him. He did it last season, did it in the summer. He put together a great team that took the championship by storm. So you've got to put your trust in him and say that we've still got a week to go, and fingers crossed he's going to fill those holes in the squad.
Yeah, Chris, cheer us up a little bit. There are probably some loan players out there, are they not? I mean, we mentioned Balogun. I hadn't heard of Balogun before he started his goal scoring exploits with in the French league. You'd hope that actually company might have his finger on the pulse for one of these kind of players at an Arsenal or at a Chelsea or at a City, which perhaps is that surprise package. I mean, I can't remember the last time somebody in the Premier League had that impact, but there's got to be somebody out there, surely, to fill that striker spot or even that left spot if Matson's not available.
Yeah, got to hope so, haven't you? But it's in turn. I mean, there's no sort of buzz about the Premier League in terms of we've got this striker coming through at Chelsea. There's young Doak at Liverpool that came on as a sub down at Chelsea. I say Balogun. I watched him play for the under-21s at Turf Moor, and that's with Anthony Gordon, and looked very impressive. And I think he went to Borough, didn't he, on loan, and didn't pull any trees up there, and then goes to France and rips it up. But it might well be that it might turn to the free market. I mean, there's some players there that someone is going to take a chance on. I see this, not the company profile, but like Morelos is on a free. So, he knows where the pegs are. You've still got Eden Hazard on a free, tantalisingly. If someone can get him fit, I see Ryan Bertrand's without a club, training with Chelsea. He might fill your left back void, but unfortunately, I don't see that happening. I think it will be a young lone player, who's up and down, more, probably more attack minded. But it's one of those. It's someone will fit the metrics somewhere in Europe, or it'll have to be one of these loans. But I mean, who's City got behind the first team, behind Alvarez and Haaland? Delap was the one everyone's raving about, and he's gone to the Championship and offered next to nothing in a couple of loan moves. So maybe he's not not as good as everyone thought he was.
Yeah. Simon, what do you think about that? It's it is a bit of a searching for a needle in a haystack, isn't it, really?
It is. I just actually Google newsed Balogun because I haven't looked for the last few days to see what's going on with him. And apparently Monaco are very close to securing a deal for him for 45 million. So, it does put into perspective, the chances of getting him. He said right at the start of the summer that he didn't want to go on loan again. He wanted a permanent move. But you would have thought, you sort of think like, he'd be a good one. He's had a good season in France, and that's what we're talking about, 45 million for players like that.
Mm.
So that is the reality check. I think Chris has got a really good point there about scouting around for, I mean, there are experienced strikers, and in that position, we've got so much youth and potential in the wide areas and in midfield that you sort of think, someone, I'm not suggesting him at all because he's gone to play in MLS now, but the type of player like Teemu Pukki, who like was 28 years old, has been fished out of Europe, somebody who scored goals regularly and has that confidence that he can put the ball in the back of the net. Maybe that kind of signing, obviously not him, before we start getting people on Twitter saying, what are these boys on about, suggesting we sign Pukki on loan from Minnesota United. But that kind of player, an experienced European goal scorer, and there are those players out there, and they don't cost a fortune, but you're finding a young striker with no real experience and expecting them to come in and be a 15-goal a season man in the Premier League is really, really tough. You've got to do an amazing job to do that. Having said that, Amdouni might be that player for all we know. You know, from a slightly deeper role, he might sneak in there and score a lot of goals.
Yeah, or Paul, Woody, it could be Foster. The guy who runs fast in straight lines from last week. It could be Foster.
It could be.
I jest, of course. Are we now looking back at the decision to let Barnes go and wondering whether that was in haste, given the fact that he's been there, he's done it, he's spent a number of years in the Premier League. He's not going to get you 15 goals, clearly, but he was almost the foil for the likes of Benson and Teller, especially in the second half of the season, to get that. Do you think we might regret perhaps not keeping Ashley for another 12 months, perhaps?
You may do, but it also maybe speaks to company's intent that he's quite willing to play somebody slightly older in a position as a stopgap to do something in a particular job. So maybe there is something in the pipeline to get somebody slightly older to do something, to be that glue, and to who is proven. I mean, there's a lot of hope there, but maybe that's what we will be looking at, and I think it would make sense.
Definitely. Let's leave the transfer news there. In a second, we're going to talk about the forthcoming game against Aston Villa. So Aston Villa, the visitors to Turf Moor at the weekend. Fair to say a bit of a mixed start in the Premier League for Aston Villa. Smashed on the opening weekend by a very, very, very good-looking Newcastle team. I think we kind of all said that they looked the best in week one. And then dished out a bit of a beating to Sean Dyche's Everton last weekend, and then come into the game on Sunday at Turf Moor on the back of a very comprehensive win against Hibs on Wednesday evening. Simon, it kind of feels like the Premier League season kicks off for us on Sunday, doesn't it? And I kind of thought, well, Villa might be the kind of ideal opponent, but 9 goals without reply in the last 2 games, a hat-trick for Ollie Watkins, albeit against a rather poor-looking Hibs side. This is going to be a big test for us, isn't it?
It is. It's a really big test. And at least they've got their backlash out of the way after the Newcastle game. You know, if we'd have played them the week after, I think, you know, you might be looking at something similar to what Everton got. But no, I mean, I think it is a really big test because these are the kind of games that you know, where are Villa expected to finish realistically? I know people have been hyping them up as top 4. I don't think they are at all. But, you know, they'd be hoping for, you know, Europa League, Conference League positions, that sort of top 8 maybe. Those are the kind of teams that you're probably looking to get something against at home. You know, at least a point against teams like that. And, you know, it's only a couple of years since Villa was kind of at our level, weren't they, in the Premier League? And it feels like they've moved into a different stratosphere. And obviously we've had to come back up. But it is a big test because, you know, you don't want another result like the City one against Villa. You know, you want to be competing and getting something out of that game. And we've had 2 weeks now on the training ground as well, where you really hope that we're a bit more prepared than we were against City, and that the idea of the starting 11 will be a little bit more firmly entrenched in company's mind, and the game plan a little bit clearer. So it's a big test. There's no, you know, we're still way early in the season, so there's no must-win games or anything. But you know, it's not. You don't want to be losing this one.
Chris, I mean, we're coming into the back of this, you know, on the back of a couple of positive results ourselves. A fairly comprehensive win against Dundee United, I think it was last Friday, and then a convincing win against the Manchester United 3-0, we believe, at Carrington the other day. That got plenty of ridicule in the national press and amongst the kind of banter merchants on Twitter. But it can't do us any harm going into and getting 90 minutes, even if it's spread across 30 minutes against a team like United. Would you take a point against Villa if I offered it you now, or do you kind of see that as, a kind of slightly defeatist attitude going into a game like that?
No, I'm with Simon. I think if you can get something against Villa, I think that's a fine result. It's I'd take a point all day long. I look at how they finished the season. Emery's come in and got giving them a real clear identity now, and I looked, the summer business looks like, very, very canny, very astute, but their opening lineup at Newcastle didn't look too dissimilar from last season. So they've got that sort of, that continuity. And I say, I'm again, without agreeing with Simon too much, I don't see them troubling the top four, but I very much expect them to be top 7, top 8. And they've got quality all over the place, haven't they? They can afford to. Mings is going to be out for the foreseeable, but they've got quality backup in there. World Cup winning goalkeeper. It's Watkins, who's he's hot and cold, but he's currently very, very warm, and I expect it's going to be an extremely difficult afternoon. And I'd take a 0-0 or 1-1, and any time, yeah.
Yeah, and would it? Definitely. Let's not turn this into a 2010 general election. I agree with Nick Fest and all agree with Simon, because we know that never ends well. But Villa, do you expect them to kind of have as good a season this season as they ended last season? As Chris said, Emery's come in. He's a bit of an identity manager. I think I remember watching him when he was Almeria manager nearly 20 years ago, and he seems to have crafted a really lovely looking squad there with Tielemans coming in, and he's been used sparingly up until now. Duran, I think it is up front, the RB, all of that lot. They are a good side, aren't they? And do you feel that some Burnley fans are perhaps, I might have been guilty of it, thinking it's a, not a tap-in as such, but a game where, of course we can get something against Villa at home?
I think they're wrong. Anybody who's saying that is wrong. It's not the Villa of 2 years ago. It's a far better drilled side, and as we know, had they had a full season with Emery, they would have finished something around 5th, wouldn't they? So they are looking at being a top 6 side, and I think it's more of a legitimate benchmark as to if we get something against Villa, it shows that we'll probably have a better season than maybe some of us anticipated. But if we take a drubbing off Villa, then I think there'll be some distraught folk on Sunday evening.
And luckily, Justin, it is a bank holiday, so if it does all go badly wrong, we can all just get drunk in any number of bars across Burnley. But how do you expect us to line up against Villa? Because I'm not 100% certain that the Man City lineup gave us too many clues as to the kind of settled starting 11, or even the system that company wants to play.
I've got to be honest with you. I've got absolutely no idea. I couldn't even any position on the pitch, I think, is still up for grabs. I think probably let's have a think. Who is the first name on the team sheet? Probably Jordan Bayer's definitely going to play. I wouldn't surprise me if Muric was in goal over Trafford. It wouldn't surprise me if Ekdal played at left back. It wouldn't surprise. I just I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about this season. I haven't got a clue. We normally have a pretty good idea, don't we, about who these players are, where they can play, what they can do, where they're up to. We normally have a pretty good idea about what sort of system we're going to play and what our ideal first team's going to be. Honestly, I couldn't tell you now. I couldn't tell you what the team's going to be. I couldn't even guess at it. But also, what's interesting, I think, about that is I bet Unai Emery can't guess what team we're going to play either, which is probably to our advantage. He surprised us against City, certainly surprised me. That wasn't the team I was expecting in any regard, and I'd be very surprised if that same team starts on Sunday. So we've got that sort of element of surprise, haven't we? We've got that sort of, if they don't know, if we don't know who they're going to play, then the opposition don't know either. But I think it's going to be a tough game. I think Villa are a much better side than everyone's given them credit for. I think when Emery came in, we all saw how, I think they've always had good players, haven't they? But I think the shambolic management under Steven Gerrard, when that ended and Emery came in, he was able to sort of identify and galvanize that team into something that turned into a much better side than went before without really adding much to it. And I think they could be surprise contenders for top 4 this season. I think he's a great manager, and I think he's got a great set of players there. And I think it's going to be a really tough game for us. I would definitely take a point. But again, if they're going to be in that sort of top 6, 7, the results against teams like that aren't going to be where we get the points to stay up. We need to be focusing on picking those points up against the teams that are going to be around where we think we'll finish. But a point against Villa on Sunday, I think, will be a very, very good sign. It's going to be a hard game, but they're all hard games in this league, aren't they? But it'll give us a few more clues about where we are. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and Justin mentioned there, Chris, the excitement of not knowing what the team is going to be. At some point, that team you'd expect would become settled. Just looking at some of them positions that we looked at, Justin said, who's the first name? I think Cullen's probably the first name on the team sheet, and then everything is kind of built around him. There's been some rumours about Bayer perhaps being injured. I know there's some kind of nonsense, some Facebook posts about him doing his ACL against Dundee United. He'd not even played against Dundee United. There's all this kind of weird kind of rumour that kind of just adds to that mystique of us not knowing what we're going to play. Who do you expect to kind of start in those key positions, perhaps at goalkeeper and perhaps that forward 3, if you will? Do you have any clue who might be there?
Well, you can only hope with Bayer and pray. I mean, why do you go out and sign a left-sided centre-back for €3 million? Maybe there is, no smoke without fire sort of thing. But we can only pray, because the lad is sheer class. I thought he was absolutely sensational against Haaland, second half against City. He barely gave him a kick. He went up to him man to man and stood up to his physicality. His pace. He matched him for pace, matched his movement. It's absolutely terrific. He's striding out with the ball, and he's the absolute business. But I don't think anyone can pick this Burnley team until we get this left-sided player lined up. Because ultimately we're lopsided, aren't we? We started with this back 3, back 5. Alderweireld on the right of that. He ended up on the left of that. Second half, he was in front of the back, the back 4 at one stage, back 3, however you wanted to look at it. It was all over the place, Alderweireld. So I think Alderweireld's a stick on. I think him and Bayer are the first choice centre backs. I think Roberts is your man at the right sided role, whether he's a wing back or a full back. Trafford, he's nailed his colours to the mast. He's spent what he's spent on Trafford. Trafford's going to play come what may, I think, unless barring injury and a loss of form, a suspension. But you'd imagine Burge and Cullen being 2-2 starting there, and I thought Collie Oshaw was a real bright spark. I think he'll be involved again. Give Burnley a great deal on the night. And again, I think he's going to pin his colours to the mast again with Foster. He's his man, and he's gonna go with him. So you imagine I'm doing he's one of those as well. So maybe not much room to manoeuvre with.
Yeah, and Simon, it is a bit of a guessing game, but I mean, one of the kind of players who we've not mentioned, and his kind of signing fell between the two podcasts, is the lad from Troy. He's the other winger, Odebert, is it? Odebert. He's somebody else who we've not even factored in. I mean, we mentioned Koleosho because he was one of the surprise inclusions against City. It does feel lopsided, doesn't it, as we've mentioned there, but do you agree with Chris, just to kind of get the kind of mutual loving going again, that actually until we get somebody who is going to play left back, it is going to feel a little bit round pegs in square holes or square pegs in round holes, whichever way you want to say it?
Yeah, unless he bites the bullet and plays Charlie Taylor there, which he's not shown any indication that that's what he wants to do. Which I do think it's a bit harsh on Charlie Taylor, to be honest, because I think, he's actually a proven left back in the Premier League. He's done it season after season. And we're behaving as though we've got no left back whatsoever. I mean, how must he feel like? It must be quite gutting for Charlie Taylor, really, to have all that experience at left back in the Premier League. And you've seen people played out of position and people like us saying, well, we've no left back. We have got a left back, but Company doesn't want to play him because he doesn't feel like he fits into his system, which is fair enough. In the attacking question, yeah, I mean, you might be right about, an unexpected addition in the attacking line, because Zaror is effectively out until the middle of September, isn't he now, as a result of that challenge on Kyle Walker at the end. So, there's, and then there's Benson. He's Benson. I presume Benson must not have been fully fit for the City game, but 2 weeks on, he might be. So, we might see Benson on one flank and Koleosho on another, or we might see the new lad come in there, or we might sign another winger tomorrow morning and he starts. It is pretty fluid. I agree with Chris. There are some names there. I wouldn't be, but I also agree with Justin that it wouldn't be massively shocking the way things have gone with his pre-season if he does start Muric instead of Trafford. Because he's just thrown these things out of left field at us. I think we'll find out against Villa, though, what he thinks his starting lineup is. I think we all said don't read too much into the City starting lineup, but we should read a lot into what the Villa starting lineup is.
Yeah, Fab, another friend of the podcast, Fabrizio Romano, has literally just tweeted that PSV have rejected the Burnley proposal for Bakayoko, so we might have to wait at least another week until we get the conclusion.
He was crap anyway. We didn't need it.
Sorry, we didn't
Absolute rubbish. Come on, let's get at it.
Who's that Cartos who's just signed for Seville, who apparently came for a medical and decided he wanted to play European football? Forget him. We don't need him. Let's move on.
He's no Lyle Foster.
He's no Lyle Foster, I mean, I'm not sure this guy even runs in straight lines, faster or otherwise.
Oh, that's going to stick all year, that one, isn't it?
He's going to stick all year. That
Especially when he gets his 15th goal of the season.
And he just points towards Miami from turf 4. He finds out in advance where Miami is and just reveals his T-shirt.
After his straight line goal celebration. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nobody will be complaining.
Of course they won't. Exactly. It is a bit of a surprise, though, Woody, isn't it? Have you got your crystal ball out there in Cleveland, and can you shed any light? If I was to kind of hold a gun to your head and say Muric or Trafford, who you're going for, and if I was going to say Bayer or Shea or Bayer and Alderkirk, who are you going for?
I think he's going to play Trafford. I think he's shown with Foster that he has favourites. And I think he's invested a lot of money in Trafford, and he's not here to be his number 2. So I think he has to play Trafford. I think the Keel will play with Bayer. I think maybe because he has that additional pace. So yeah, that's what I'd go with, especially with a gun to my head.
Excellent stuff. Well, when we come back after this short break, we will talk about perhaps ALK's biggest monetary outlay, the deal to sign or sign up or overtake or take over, whatever you want, a Belgian club. We'll be back after this. So this news surfaced quite a while ago that Burnley were one of a couple of people, or a couple of parties interested in purchasing the football club in Kortrijk in Belgium, lovely part of the world, Kortrijk. And we kind of dismissed it as we wanted to spend any money that ALK might spend on a football club, on actual football players. I think the spending now is close to 100 million euros. But it seems that the deal for Kortrijk, which is, I think, currently owned by Vincent Tan, he of Cardiff City fame, if that's what we want to call it. The old tap on the head, the old kind of football shirt over a normal shirt tucked into the pants.
That's fashion now, isn't it?
Very, very Bond villain-esque, a football supporting Bond villain. Simon, we were really dismissive of this Kortrijk move by ALK, weren't we, at the start of the summer? I mean, I know I think I was the only flag waver just due to the fact that I'd visited the city and it's pretty decent. Do you see any advantages now, given that we have got perhaps a more inflated squad, to having a feeder club? And you know, do you see this as a good deal for ALK and ultimately for Burnley Football Club?
Well, I have kind of changed my mind on it. Yeah, when I've looked at what they've done in the market this summer, where they are going out and seem to be looking to sweep up young talent, underrated talent, unproven talent, really, that if we can establish ourselves in the Premier League, which is a big if this season, but if we can establish ourselves there, then we will have reached a level where those kind of players aren't going to be coming anywhere near to our first team level. You know, if the players we've signed and the quality that we hope we have means that we can finish 12th in the Premier League, then €2 million signing midfielders aren't getting in that side. So having a place where you can put them all together and have them be trained in the company system, go through all those 100 hours that we've talked about and do all that in one place in a club that is a mini Burnley, and then fish out the ones that are showing the brightest talent and look ready for the Premier League, I can totally see the benefit of that, actually. So having said, you know, let's run one club before we can run two, I would alter that opinion and say, yeah, if that's the way we're going with these signings, it does make sense.
Just in a bit of a collector's item there, Simon, it could be that son in Miami, kind of agreeing with something that Don Pace, as he's affectionately known by some Claret supporters, content creators, he's actually agreeing that he thinks this might be a decent idea. Now,
yeah, he has a smile on his face, even.
He does, doesn't he? I'm kind of wondering what he's been on at the cricket. There are a few too many shandies, I think. But I mean, we saw this week the move that we were looking at. Is it Lucky Bacchio from Hertha Berlin's move to Seville? And there's some talk of the same controlling group being in charge of both those sides, and that has aided that transition for him to move to Sevilla rather than come to Turf Moor. Aside from it being a good weekend destination for Burnley fans and somebody else to follow, are you also on board now with this feeder club, or a club which we can use to, you know, better them within the Belgian league, but also actually prove as a bit of a testing ground for some of the talent we're going to be linked with?
Not really, no. I just think it's this idea of owning. I think the idea is to own a string of clubs, isn't it, at different levels that can feed into each other. It just seems to me to be like a solution in search of a problem. You know, we already have the loan system where you can get players out of the club, which to me, I mean, I can't. What Simon says about it, them sort of all going together, learning the company way and that side of things, that makes a bit of sense to me. But also there's the possibility with the loan system of placing players in environments that are a benefit to them, so they can go to a club that's right for them, with a manager and coaching system that's right for them, playing the kind of football that's right for them. So we already have a way of doing what we're talking about without having the risk of having to buy and run another football club. Which if you've got this string of clubs, like I think the intention is ultimately to have more than one feeder club. it develops this sort of house of cards scenario where, you run the risk of the one at the top, which is obviously Burnley, propping up some of these clubs financially if they can't make their own way, and they end up just being a bit of a liability, draining the resources. And the risk to me outweighs the gains. We already have a way of doing it. We already have a way of getting these players experience. If we're savvy with where we place them, what clubs we entrust them to, then there's no reason why we need to risk spending money on buying clubs as a place to place them. And if they do have money to buy other clubs, I'd rather they spend it, upgrading the facilities at Turf Moor. Nobody can argue that we've got like the best stadium in the league. So I'd rather spend it at home than risk investing it in another business that, it's hard enough running one football club, isn't it? Imagine it running three or four. I'm not sure that risk is worth it.
Well, maybe we could loan them Russell Ball to sort of introduce some fan experience into Belgium, and they can get like a black charcoal wall and some doner kebab sausage rolls or something. Do you think they go down well in Belgium? I don't know.
I think the doner. Honestly, I know just it's your first visit to the turf this season on Sunday. The doner sausage roll. I mean, it's £4.20, which is, I've got a slight issue with a £4.20 sausage roll.
I'm going for it.
But yeah, I mean, Chris, Justin seems to want to spend it on more LED screens. I think Harry Garlick might have run out of LED screens in Burnley Town Centre. Might have to go to the Paddying branch to get more in. It kind of works for City, but I don't see what benefits.
He wants LSD screens.
LSD screens. I'm not sure what benefits that City get other than the kudos of owning several football clubs. I mean, I know there's kind of this thought process that actually, perhaps assistant managers can then go out and get experience as managers, and you kind of have that. And I know, and Postecoglou, whatever he's called down at Spurs, was formerly at a City group when he was in Japan. Do you see that kind of, we've had two arguments. Do you want to see the money spent at home, or are you quite happy that, as long as it doesn't affect the running of Burnley Football Club, there is some fringe benefits to getting players out on loan to a league where we've been successful in bringing players over from?
I've got to look at sort of, I think Barnsley's owners do they have 4 or 5 clubs, something like that? And you look at, obviously, you mentioned, the CFG, and City sent Vieira out to manage New York City, and Lampard went there before becoming a City player. Did he? I can't remember whether he went out on loan before City could pick him up, but I can't recall any sort of occasion where, how many players have come out of these clubs that City own, and City have I think Aaron Moy came out of Melbourne, and they sold him to Huddersfield Town for 10 million quid. Well, great, fantastic. Exactly. So, but it's, I think Leicester have had a time with Leuven, and there's Midtjylland and Brentford, and there's all these like little examples, but I don't see a conveyor belt. The only way the only one you look at is Udinese and Watford, but Udinese were always at a standard higher than Watford. Udinese had players like Alexis Sanchez, and at the time they were lending him Vidra, who turned out to be the Championship's player of the season when he went to Watford, and things like that. They were, they weren't quite good enough for top half Serie A, but they were more than good enough for the Championship, and that's the one partnership where you think, well, yeah, Watford probably profited out of that, but I just don't see it. Burnley have had these tie-ins for 2 or 3 years now with
10 points.
Landudno and Cove Ramblers. I can't remember the other, but you go back to Carolina. Is it Air United?
Air United.
Carolina Railhawks. Yeah, Carolina Railhawks. Burnley played a friendly there one summer. I think that was the only benefit they got. You didn't see any players going out there on loans for experience. You weren't developing or taking their best talent to come here. They was short-lived. That was a short-lived enterprise. But I just like Justin said, it's hard enough to successfully run one club, never mind a group.
Yeah, and Simon, this kind of idea of multiple club ownership, I think Chris makes a really interesting point there. Actually, City don't have this conveyor belt of stars that are coming through, and Brighton perhaps have used it quite well with is it Union they've got over there? Union sent Galois. They had the a couple of players who've gone there first, toughened up to kind of European standard football, and then come to Brighton. They are kind of the model that everybody holds up with the amount of sales that they brought in. How do you see it working? Do you see it as a part of the Burnley family, or could this just be ALK as the vehicle, as the investment vehicle, diversifying its portfolio, and the two remain essentially as separate entities?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Brighton, a lot of their recruitment and their big profits have come from South America as well. Yeah. They've gone fishing in a market that a lot of people don't look at, which is promising young talent in South America, which ends up in the Premier League, but usually via Spain or Portugal, and then comes in. Belgium's not a tremendous market. There's a lot of good young players coming out of Belgium at the moment. But if you go through your list of top 10 Belgian Premier League players, and it's not particularly brilliant once you get past 5 or 6, is it? So, would you do it in Belgium? The model has worked really well for Red Bull. They have moved players around from club to club and got the concern there. The concern there is that Leipzig is the big brother and gets the benefit of all, and Salzburg get unhappy because they lose people, and New York doesn't really come into it that much other than on the coaching side. It's not something that I would think was a priority for the club, to be honest. I take Justin's point that there are other ways of doing it. And Chris makes a very valid point that, other examples haven't produced. The City Football Group, I don't think is really about producing players for City, to be honest. I think it is about other things. Let's just say that. But that's a long discussion. But if we are going to be, the business model is to buy these undiscovered talents and try and sell them at profits and so on. Do they think that they can't do that just within the framework of Burnley Football Club? It appears to be the case. So I can see the logic in it. It would be quite fun though to send a few of our the club's executives over there, and then we can tell the Belgian fans what they can expect. But I don't know. It's good content for season 2 of Mission to
Kortrijk. That'd be fantastic, won't it? Love that. There is season 2 of Mission to Burnley. There is signs up around the club in the exec boxes, I believe, to say that film is underway from the same production company. So I think there is going to be a second series of that particular documentary series that I think it's fair to say we enjoyed to a certain extent. But so that could be quite interesting.
Top 10. It's top 10. When you go on the Sky Glass, other products are available. But it comes up as on the top 10. So it's people are watching it, and outside of Burnley as well. You'd suggest.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent stuff. Well, let's leave it there. Next week we're going to come back. We'll have some more, hopefully, transfer news, because we'll be recording it the day before the transfer window slams shut, because they never close it carefully, do they? It's always slammed shut. I'm surprised it's still got its glass in. But hopefully we'll have a review of another food stuff from the turf from Justin, and perhaps he might be able to use the self-ordering screens this week when he goes on. But thanks as ever to Chris, to Woody, to Simon, and to Justin for joining us this episode. Don't forget, you can follow us on all your favourite social media platforms, and by that I mean Twitter, X and Facebook. Just search for B-Hole Podcast. And don't forget to drop us a like, a share and a review on iTunes, because it does help fellow Burnley fans find us as well. Until next time, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.